Hey guys, tonight we slip barefoot through gold-speckled grass under the West African dawn, where the air is thick with the scent of firewood and the unspoken pull of something ancient, something powerful. You're not in your bed anymore. You're in the heartland of the Ashanti, where empires were built not on shouted orders, but on silence that spoke louder than war drums. The heat hasn't peaked yet, but sweat already beads at your brow. A kente cloth, vivid as a peacock's dream, clings to your shoulders. The earth beneath your feet glitters with flecks of gold, and that's not poetic license. This soil literally sparkles. The Ashanti Empire rose on this gold, molded it, traded it, sanctified it, but never let it speak louder than their values. You probably won't survive this kind of morning. Too hot, too intense, too alive, and certainly not if you're expecting Western-style kings yelling across throne rooms. That's not how this world works. Here, stillness is a weapon. A glance can summon armies. A pause in speech might mean your head. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, drop your location and local time in the comments. I always want to know who's listening and where. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The world you're walking into doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shout, it simmers. The Ashanti didn't just appear, they condensed, formed like thunderclouds behind the ancient forest canopy, fed by gold dust, ritual, and resistance. You move through mist and vines, deeper into a place where tribal alliances had fractured, and from the ashes rose a new order. It's the late 1600s. You're not standing in Ghana yet. This is still the Ashanti Confederacy. Villages flicker like lanterns in the darkness, each ruled by its own Ohen, or chief. But something new is crackling in the air. Trade routes are thickening like veins, and they're pulsing with salt, cola nuts, and, most of all, gold. Always gold. But gold is loud. It tempts thieves, breeds conflict, calls to colonizers. The Ashanti? They answered with quiet strength. You reach the edge of a village just as the sun spills molten light over thatched roofs. You'd expect a town this wealthy to be roaring with merchants, guards barking orders, people hustling. But there's a strange hum here instead, a low, coordinated rhythm, no shouting, no chaos. You don't realize at first that you're walking through one of the most orderly, richest settlements in pre-colonial Africa. In this society, power isn't a volume setting, it's presence. And presence here is tied to something sacred. You're led to a clearing. A hush spreads like a spell, and a group gathers in a slow spiral. In the center, a carved stool, not just any stool. The Ashanti believe souls don't live in bodies, they settle in stools. That one over there? It's polished until it gleams, never touches the ground, and is bathed in ritual libations. It's not for sitting, it's alive. This is where it starts, where all of Ashanti authority is rooted, not in one man, not in muscle, but in consensus, memory, and divine silence. When the first Asantehen, King Osei Tutu, united the clans, it wasn't through conquest alone. He carried a secret weapon, the golden stool. Not a metaphor. A stool made of literal gold, said to have floated down from the sky, carrying the soul of the Ashanti nation. Historians still argue whether the stool fell from heaven in a theatrical ritual or a carefully staged political masterstroke. Either way, it worked. You're watching unity be forged, not with bloodshed, but with shared reverence. Osei Tutu and his priest, Kamfo Anokye, understood the assignment to create a symbol so sacred that to even attempt to sit on it meant death. not because of punishment, but because the soul of the entire people rested on it. The stool didn't shout its power, it just was. And the people believed. Still do? The beauty of this beginning lies in what's missing: noise. The Ashanti didn't need 1,000 banners or dramatic declarations. Their empire whispered itself into being, with a golden artifact, a web of clans, and a system so structured it made European envoys sweat. You step back as a circle of elders slowly rises, not with a trumpet, not with a clamor, but with a steady breath. The leader, draped in folded silk, gestures once. A single bead rattler steps forward. The only sound is a rhythm, soft, deliberate, like a clock set to ancestral time. Later, in a shaded courtyard, someone offers you a calabash of water. You're confused. Why no guards? No yelling? No court criers like in European palaces? And then you realize everyone knows what to do. Social roles are so clearly defined, so deeply ingrained, that yelling would be like shouting directions at your own heartbeat. It's not needed. Everything functioned. You're still in that courtyard, remember? The mornings deepened, and the shadows stretched longer across the red clay. A soft drumming thuds somewhere in the distance. Not loud, not frantic, just steady, ritualistic. You're seated on a carved wooden bench, watching the chiefs file in, one by one, wrapped in layers of kente so rich it looks like they're dipped in sunlight and thunder. They don't talk, not yet. There's a rhythm here you're only beginning to understand. Everything moves with intention. One chief lifts his hand, another nods. A younger man shuffles forward and whispers something to a figure seated at the center. That man doesn't answer. He just raises his eyebrows, the faintest tilt of the head, and suddenly, the entire court pivots. Decision made. No gavel, no barked command. This is what authority looks like in the Ashanti Empire. Robes that ripple like flags, fans that move like punctuation, and a quiet that cuts deeper than any scream. Speech? That's reserved. And when it happens, it flows in metaphor. No direct insults, no crude decrees, just meaning wrapped in silk and proverb. You look again at the chiefs. They're not just rulers. They're translators of tradition, embodiments of law. But unlike Western kings, their power doesn't rest in unilateral force. It lives in process, in layered consensus, in the unspoken agreement that chaos is the child of loud men. Ashanti politics? It's a masterclass in restraint. The Asantemen, the Ashanti nation, was organized as a loose yet powerful confederation of states. Each state had its own chief, Ohin, but all answered to the Asantehene, the supreme ruler seated in Kumasi. But here's the trick. The Asantehene couldn't just bark orders across the realm. He had to convene councils, weave decisions through a complex hierarchy of voices, roles, and rituals. You'd think this would slow them down. It didn't. Instead, it made them unbreakable. Historians still debate whether this decentralized structure was a brilliant check on tyranny or just a logistical necessity given the terrain and cultural complexity. Either way, it worked. The chiefs followed the lead of the golden stool, not the man sitting behind it. Loyalty was to the soul of the nation, not the noise of any single ruler. This system meant things took time. But that time, it built legitimacy, it built patience, and in a region filled with rival kingdoms, tribal wars, and European meddling, that slow-burning cohesion was more powerful than any cannon. You notice something else. No one speaks out of turn. Not out of fear, but out of respect. The Ashanti court values listening more than speaking, a radically foreign concept in many modern political chambers. Here, your words are like gold dust, precious, limited, and weighed before release. But don't mistake stillness for submission. These are not passive people. Underneath the quiet is steel. Let's talk about what happens when someone does break the silence. Say a chief grows arrogant, starts shouting commands, disrupting protocol. He won't be booed, he won't be dragged out. Instead, one by one, elders will rise. Slowly, one may cough, another may shift his cloth. The king will lower his gaze. No words, no direct confrontation, and yet, the offending chief will feel it like a thunderclap. He'll know he's crossed a line older than himself. The Ashanti enforce order through layers of cultural shame, subtle cues, and an almost theatrical discipline. Think of it as emotional aikido, redirecting energy with grace instead of overpowering it. The quiet becomes a blade. Even greetings are dense with structure. You don't just say hello, you say maki, good morning, and wait for the reply, ya agya, if you're speaking to an elder man, or ya ene to a respected woman. It's not just language, it's hierarchy embedded in speech. Even pleasantries are policy. You eat slowly, savoring the warmth. Food on a rainy day tastes different, softer, quieter. You let the flavors linger. One bite too many of pickled radish, and your face contorts. Still counts as discipline. You remember something your fencing master used to say. A hungry warrior is noisy. A full one is dangerous. You're not sure if that means you're now a threat or just sleepy again. Across the corridor, you hear someone laugh. Probably the cook's son playing Go with himself again. He cheats. Boldly. With breakfast done, you rinse your hands, wipe your mouth with a square of folded cloth, and stand. Your joints protest. Your knees make their little rice cracker sounds again. You're 28. You feel 80. Now comes the task you've been quietly dreading, stepping outside even for a moment. But before that, robes. Getting dressed as a samurai is a delicate business, especially in damp weather. You sort through your options, your daily kimono, wool, gray, your backup kimono, also gray, somehow even heavier, and a silk one reserved for events that definitely aren't happening today. You pick the daily one. It smells faintly of cedar and last week's rain. You lay it out carefully. First the underrobe, then the hakama trousers, then the jacket, each layer tied just so, each crease smoothed. You cinch your belt, loop the sash, adjust the fit. It's like armor made of fabric and passive-aggressive family expectations. And then, the final piece, your katana. You lift it with both hands, balancing it across your lap before slipping it through your belt. The blade stays sheathed, for now, but its weight is a reminder. You're not just some guy in pajamas. You're a warrior. With great power comes great puddle avoidance. As you finish tying the last knot, you notice something on the floor. A spider the size of a coin, slowly navigating its way across the tatami. You stare at each other. It pauses. You nod in mutual respect. It continues on. Your reflection stares back at you from the brass mirror again. You look serious, poetic, slightly moist. You're ready. Ready for what, exactly? Unknown. The rain has turned the outside world into a slippery watercolor, and your calendar is as blank as your expression when someone mentions politics. Still, you'll step out, because that's what you do. You pause by the incense burner once more, inhale deeply, and adjust the collar of your robe. Outside, the rain continues its gentle, endless applause. You slide the outer door open with care. The wooden threshold creaks softly, a familiar old protest, and the scent of wet earth rises up like a greeting. Just beyond the covered walkway, the garden glistens, every leaf lacquered by rain. It's quiet, save for the patter on tile and the distant cooing of doves who clearly have nothing better to do. Dressing is one thing. Moving about, dressed, is quite another. The damp air clings to your clothes, tugging at the hems of your hakama and making the fabric feel twice as heavy. Your socks, white if you're lucky, are doomed the moment you touch the floor outside. The first step is always the deepest. You stand just under the eaves, safe for now. There's a pair of wooden Gita sandals waiting there, carefully angled by some thoughtful servant who knew you'd be too proud to ask. They're thick-soled and worn, with a toe strap that always feels like it's trying to saw your foot in half. You slip them on and immediately regret it. The soles are cold, slick with dew, and you have the grace of a tipsy heron. Still, pride demands you maintain composure. You tuck your katana tighter into your sash and begin the long, noble pilgrimage. Around the corner, to the storeroom. Not every samurai had grand estates. Yours is modest but decent, with a small courtyard garden, a few side rooms, and a shed where tools and rice sacks are stored. You try to act casual as you navigate the outer path, but it's hard to look stoic when you're flinching every third step and pretending you're not stepping directly into mud. The umbrella, of course, is missing. It always is. One of the house retainers has borrowed it again. You'll get it back in 2 weeks with a new hole and the scent of dried fish. So you do what any average samurai does on a rainy day. You pretend it's part of your training. Every drip down your neck is a test of discipline. Every squish of a damp sock is a challenge from the gods. You are not cold, you are not annoyed, you are stoically damp. Finally, you reach the storeroom. You crouch slightly, shift your weight, and slide open the old door. It smells of hay, rust, and something suspiciously like fermented daikon. The tools inside haven't moved in a month, and neither has the spider colony on the ceiling. Your mission? Retrieve the rain shutters. See, when it pours like this, you're supposed to lower the bamboo slats along the east corridor to keep the wind from sneaking in. Normally a task for a servant, but on a rainy day like this, with nothing else to do and a mild superiority complex to maintain, you decide to do it yourself. You lug out the panels one by one, balancing them across your shoulders. It's not glamorous, but it's satisfying in its way. Simple, direct, physically annoying. Historians still argue whether samurai were expected to participate in these tasks regularly, or if it was just a mark of eccentricity when they did. Either way, you've always liked the rhythm of it. As you install the last shutter, a splash echoes behind you. You turn, slowly, dramatically, only to see a frog launch itself off a stone into a puddle with what can only be described as smug glee. You bow slightly in its direction. You're not above respecting a good exit. With the shutter secured, you return to the inner hall. Your sleeves are wetter now, your pride slightly less crisp, but at least your sandals didn't betray you mid-step. You kick them off gently and step onto the dry wooden floor with a sigh of real gratitude. There is no heaven like dry feet. A servant meets you at the door with a towel. You nod again in that way that says, "Thank you, but I will pretend I could have managed." She nods back in that way that says, "I know." You retreat to the main corridor where it's warm again, pausing to watch the rain bead and run down the paper windows like tiny rivers. You notice a droplet hanging stubbornly from the edge of the eaves, not quite falling. It clings like a warrior refusing to let go, or perhaps just a drop with a flair for drama. Back inside, the household bustles at a polite volume. The cook is arguing with himself in the kitchen. The house cat, who has never paid taxes or wielded a sword, sleeps on your robe with full aristocratic authority. You do not disturb him. His honor is not to be questioned. You finally sit, towel draped around your shoulders like a general who's won the war against mild inconvenience. You sip more tea, slightly cooler now, and try to remember if there was anything important you were supposed to do today. There isn't. The rain has canceled everything, and secretly, you're relieved. No visitors, no inspections, no calls to arms or visits from the daimyo's cousin with the suspicious mole and the irritating flute. Just rain, sandals, and a samurai trying to keep his socks dry. You sit back on your cushion, exhaling slowly. The rain hasn't let up, not even slightly. It hums like 1,000 tiny drums, wrapping the house in a soft, wet cocoon. With the shutters drawn and the chores for the morning done, the real challenge begins. Passing time in a way that doesn't feel like idleness. You shift your weight, reach for the low writing table in the corner of your room, and begin preparing your tools. Inkstone, brush, paper. Writing might seem poetic, even noble, but today it's mostly to stop yourself from wandering the halls, sighing dramatically like a rejected no actor. The ink grinding begins. You hold the ink stick and swirl it slowly over the stone, adding droplets of water from a tiny jar, watching it darken to that rich charcoal black that bleeds like magic into the fibers of rice paper. This is not a task you rush. This is performance, meditation, and mild procrastination all rolled into one. Eventually, you write. A letter, perhaps, to a distant cousin who never replies but always sends plum wine at New Year's. You thank them. You pretend to be interested in their poetry. You avoid mentioning the incident with the spilled lacquer bowl, water under the bridge, you hope. Then you turn to your journal. Not everyone keeps one, but you've always liked the quiet company of a blank page. You don't write about battles or strategies, nothing so grand, just fragments. Rain today, again. Frog insulted me, I think. Will retaliate later. Historians still argue whether samurai used their personal writings as emotional outlets or merely to record practical matters. The truth, of course, is both. You fold your page neatly. No one needs to see it, especially the bit where you doodled a cartoon of the clan leader in sandals. Outside, a servant walks by carrying firewood, slipping slightly on the wet stones but catching herself with practiced grace. You nod approvingly through the screen door. A warrior spirit, that one. With writing done, you stand again and stretch. Your back cracks with a sound like snapping bamboo. Your legs complain, your hips grumble, but your mind has calmed. The tea is cooled, but you sip it anyway. Lukewarm bitterness suits the mood. Next comes the sword. Not for combat, no, nothing that exciting. Just maintenance. Every samurai knows that keeping your blade clean is half the job. A rusty sword is not only embarrassing, it's a bad omen. And today is not the day to tempt fate. You kneel, gently remove your katana from your sash, and lay it on the cloth in front of you. There's a whole ritual to this, and you follow it without overthinking. Unsheathing the blade just slightly, you examine the steel in the muted light. It's not just sharp, it's beautiful. A wave-like Haman edge dances faintly in the metal, a frozen flame. You wipe the blade with soft paper, dust it with uchiko powder, pounded stone, absurdly fine, and wipe again. The movements are slow, measured. You've done this 100 times, and still, each time feels like a conversation. A silent, slightly judgmental conversation with a long, sharp friend. You oil the blade, resheath it, and set it aside. A job well done. Of course, the wakizashi demands equal attention. You repeat the process, this time humming softly under your breath. Something vaguely melodic and very off-key. If anyone heard, you'd claim it was part of the tradition. Glance at your armor stacked in the corner, lacquered plates, silk cords, a smell that can only be described as historic. You're not putting it on today. You'd rather wrestle a badger, but you make a mental note to air it out soon. The last rainstorm caused a bit of mildew, and nothing saps honor like moldy greaves. Suddenly, a gust of wind rattles the shutters, and for a brief moment, the room darkens, shadows shifting along the walls. You wait, nothing else happens. Probably just the weather, or maybe the fox spirit that haunts the garden when it rains. Hard to say. You return to your cushion, fold your legs, and stare into the middle distance. A noble pastime, staring. It lets others assume you're reflecting deeply on military strategy, when really you're just wondering if there's any rice candy hidden in the kitchen. A servant appears with more tea. You accept it like it's a diplomatic offering from a foreign kingdom. The tea is hot again, miraculous. You sip, then, with a subtle groan, you pick up the wooden practice sword leaning against the wall. You know exactly how this is going to go. Every time it rains, you tell yourself you'll run a few kata to stay sharp. Every time you get halfway through and get distracted by a cat, a snack, or a sudden philosophical epiphany about puddles. Still, you move to the center of the room. Slowly, deliberately, you raise the bakken and begin. Step, swing, pivot, pause. The motions are like breathing now. Muscle memory passed down through calloused hands and long afternoons just like this. Your feet slide gently on the wooden floor. Your sleeves sway. You are fluid, silent, mildly out of shape. Halfway through your second form, you realize you've been making sound effects with your mouth. Tiny whooshes and soft grunts. You stop, embarrassed. No one saw. You continue. Outside, the rain drums steadily, like applause for a performance with no audience. You finish the sequence with a slow exhale and return the bakken to its place. Not your most focused session, but then again, rainy days aren't for excellence. They're for practice, gentle repetition, small rituals that tether you to purpose, and you've still got half a pot of tea. You glance at your armor stacked in the corner, lacquered plates, silk cords, a smell that can only be described as historic. You're not putting it on today. You'd rather wrestle a badger, but you make a mental note to air it out soon. The last rainstorm caused a bit of mildew, and nothing saps honor like moldy greaves. Suddenly, a gust of wind rattles the shutters, and for a brief moment, the room darkens, shadows shifting along the walls. You wait, nothing else happens. Probably just the weather, or maybe the fox spirit that haunts the garden when it rains. Hard to say. You return to your cushion, fold your legs, and stare into the middle distance. A noble pastime, staring. It lets others assume you're reflecting deeply on military strategy, when really you're just wondering if there's any rice candy hidden in the kitchen. A servant appears with more tea. You accept it like it's a diplomatic offering from a foreign kingdom. The tea is hot again, miraculous. You sip, then, with a subtle groan, you pick up the wooden practice sword leaning against the wall. You know exactly how this is going to go. Every time it rains, you tell yourself you'll run a few kata to stay sharp. Every time you get halfway through and get distracted by a cat, a snack, or a sudden philosophical epiphany about puddles. Still, you move to the center of the room. Slowly, deliberately, you raise the bakken and begin. Step, swing, pivot, pause. The motions are like breathing now. Muscle memory passed down through calloused hands and long afternoons just like this. Your feet slide gently on the wooden floor. Your sleeves sway. You are fluid, silent, mildly out of shape. Halfway through your second form, you realize you've been making sound effects with your mouth. Tiny whooshes and soft grunts. You stop, embarrassed. No one saw. You continue. Outside, the rain drums steadily, like applause for a performance with no audience. You finish the sequence with a slow exhale and return the bakken to its place. Not your most focused session, but then again, rainy days aren't for excellence. They're for practice, gentle repetition, small rituals that tether you to purpose, and you've still got half a pot of tea. The steam from your tea curls upward, disappearing into the soft lantern light. You don't even remember pouring this last cup. It's just appeared beside you, as though summoned by your well-honed sense of minor luxury. The warmth seeps into your palms, comforting and quietly smug. Across the room, the house cat finally stirs. He rises like a disgruntled noble, stretches with the grace of a seasoned duelist, and stares at you as if you are the lazy one. Then he flops back down on a different robe. A wetter one, of course. His victory is total. Rainy days, you realize, are full of small power plays like this. Now comes the indoor wandering. You drift down the corridor, hands clasped behind your back like a scholar, which is samurai code for, I don't know what to do with myself. The wood beneath your feet creaks gently with each step, and you pass the same window 3 times, pretending each glance outside is filled with deeper insight. Finally, you settle in the family archive room, or the room with scrolls and dust. It's not grand. Shelves grown with forgotten ledgers, old poetry anthologies, and one mildly scandalous romance novel written under a false name. You don't judge. Everyone's cousin dabbled in writing at some point. You pull a scroll at random. The title promises an ancestral chronicle. The handwriting promises a slow afternoon. It begins with a bold statement. Our clan originates from a man who once defeated a bear by accident. You smile, a good start. Historians still argue whether such embellished family records were meant as fact or just ceremonial fiction. You suspect it's both. An old samurai trick to make your ancestors seem bolder and your enemies more foolish. You keep reading. The next entry involves a suspicious number of cart accidents. Apparently, the family once had a terrible reputation for unstable wheels. One uncle became infamous for tipping his ox cart into a river while trying to impress a merchant's daughter. The daughter married someone else. The ox was fine. You roll the scroll up gently. A little family lore is good for the soul, but too much, and you'll start believing your third cousin invented fire. Back out in the hallway, you hear muffled laughter from the kitchen. One of the younger servants has likely spilled rice again, or burned something, or told a joke. In samurai households, those 3 outcomes are equally probable. You drift toward the sound, but stop at the doorway. You watch without interrupting, just for a moment. It's good to know that some corners of the world still hum with small joys. Returning to your room, you find a tray has been left near the door. Someone's anticipating your need for lunch. Grilled fish, pickled vegetables, a tiny bowl of soup with tofu so soft it trembles at your breath. It's not elaborate, but it's warm, and that's enough. You eat slowly, relishing each bite like a monk pretending not to enjoy miso. The fish flakes perfectly. The soup is modest but comforting. And the pickles? Surprisingly aggressive today. You make a face and nod approvingly. Someone in the kitchen is taking liberties, and you respect it. With the meal finished, you clear the tray yourself. You don't need to, but the clinking bowls give your hands something to do, and there's a certain charm in small duties. You pass a window where rain has pooled on the sill. You touch it lightly, cold, pure, briefly yours. You sit again, now comfortably full, slightly warm, and lazily alert, which means it's time for calligraphy practice. You don't need to impress anyone with your brushwork, but the act of shaping characters calms you. You settle in front of a fresh sheet, breathe once, and begin with a simple phrase: rain upon tile, quiet sword. The characters are slow, deliberate, like dancers on paper. You write a few verses from memory, then invent some, quietly pleased that no one will correct your grammar. Calligraphy is about form and flow, not spelling tests. Halfway through a line, the brush slips slightly, a blotch. You stare at it, then carefully draw a little mountain around the stain. There, now it's art, or topography. A friend once told you that great generals never had time for calligraphy. You secretly believe this is why some of them had terrible tempers. The afternoon drifts by. You switch brushes, smaller, finer, and begin on a second sheet. This one's for practice, not poetry. You write kanji over and over: honor, peace, wind, cat. The last one's an inside joke, of course. You glance over at the feline noble sprawled on your robe. He does not acknowledge your tribute. Eventually, your wrist tires. You pause, flex your fingers, and stare at the ink stains on your thumb. They'll take a day to fade, a small price for momentary elegance. Outside, the light has changed, subtly. The gray is softened, and shadows now stretch a little longer across the garden stones. The rain has shifted from steady to sporadic, less a drum line now, more a memory. You put the brushes away, clean the stone, and fold the paper carefully. Not masterpieces, but honest attempts, like much of life. The wind outside nudges the shutters. You glance up. Somewhere, beyond the clouds, the sun is beginning its slow descent. You haven't done much today, and yet it feels full, quietly full, like a teacup not brimming, but perfectly sippable. You lean back and close your eyes for a moment. Just a moment, not a nap, not quite, just stillness. The cat sneezes. You open one eye. He's licking your calligraphy. Of course. It's morning again, and you're walking beside a narrow stream that snakes through the outskirts of an Ashanti village. Dew clings to the elephant grass. Insects hum their quiet song. Birds dart through the branches, and from somewhere far off, you hear the low thump of a ceremonial drum, but not loud enough to disturb the hush that clings to this place like morning mist. You stop. Something in the stillness prickles at the back of your neck. This isn't just a quiet village. This is a village where silence has structure. It isn't empty, it's full of meaning, packed to the rafters with unspoken rules, social pressure, and ancestral presence. You're not just walking through a village, you're walking through a web. And here's the catch. In the Ashanti world, silence isn't the absence of power, it's how power moves. You probably won't survive this, not because anything will attack you, but because trying to live under this kind of social pressure without cracking would break most modern folks in under a week. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere special, let me know in the comments. What's your location and local time? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You learn very quickly that this entire civilization has been engineered to make shouting unnecessary. And it starts with the very core of Ashanti life, the Abusua, or matrilineal clan system. This isn't your average family reunion. The Abusua is more like a blood-bound operating system, running silently beneath every interaction. Your name, your taboos, your legal rights, your marriage eligibility, all of that is dictated by your mother's line. It's not just that you come from a family, you are your family, in a very literal and metaphysical sense. Let's say your clan's totem animal is the leopard. That's not a mascot, that's a spiritual fingerprint. You'd never hunt one, eat one, or even wear its fur unless you wanted to risk serious supernatural backlash. And a public shame spiral so intense it could follow your great-grandchildren. You see a boy accidentally step on a carved leopard image at a shrine. He doesn't say a word, just kneels, bows his head, and starts whispering an apology to the ancestors. A nearby elder watches silently. Nothing is said aloud. Nothing needs to be. The boy's shame is enough to fill the air. This is the real genius of the Ashanti system. When everyone is bound by a web of obligations, taboos, and honor codes, there's no need to scream. Shame does the work of shouting. And gossip? Gossip is their high-speed Wi-Fi. It's how society enforces behavior without a single gavel hitting wood. You pick up that someone was seen leaving a lover's hut too early in the morning. By the time you get to the market, 5 people are already humming suggestive songs about early birds. No names are used, but the target knows. There's a common Ashanti proverb: the town hears before the chief. Meaning, by the time a chief gets wind of your misstep, the community has already reacted, adjusted, and passed judgment in the court of rice sellers and elders. Historians still argue whether this structure emerged primarily from necessity, given the decentralized nature of early Ashanti settlements, or whether it was deliberately crafted as a tool for efficient empire management. But whatever the origin, it worked. Now, let's take a sideways step into the spiritual realm. The Ashanti weren't just governing people, they were harmonizing with spirits. The religious system is layered like a parfait of the invisible world. At the top, Nyame, the high god, omnipresent, unreachable, like the CEO who never comes down to the office. Below him, the Abazum, local deities who take a more hands-on approach. Think of them like regional managers of fate. Each shrine is sacred, and each grove pulses with its own frequency. And beneath even that, the ancestors, millions of souls who once walked these paths and now observe silently. You find yourself at the edge of one such grove. No fences, no signs, just a subtle shift in the air, like nature is holding its breath. A priestess stands motionless near a stone altar. She's not praying aloud, she's waiting for alignment. Her silence is a conversation. Offerings are placed, water poured, kola nuts split, feathers laid in careful patterns. These gestures are louder than speech. In fact, speaking in such sacred moments is discouraged unless possessed. And possession isn't theatrical, no head spinning or holy declarations. The spirit enters quietly, fills the body like fog, and speaks in riddles or not at all. You're told of a ritual where a man fasted for 7 days just to receive one word in a dream. That single word was later used to settle a land dispute. Now, that's quiet power. Even festivals. You wake to the smell of something woodsy and sweet drifting through the morning air. Charred cassava, maybe, or shea butter warming under the sun. Village sounds are back. The rhythmic thunk of a pestle against a mortar, sandals brushing earth, and goats making a kind of sleepy protest in the background. Still no shouting. You stretch and realize, again, that you haven't heard a single person raise their voice since you arrived. Not a quarrel, not a barked order, not even a loud laugh that wasn't immediately followed by a glance toward the elders, as if to say, "Sorry, I forgot myself." It's not a fluke, it's by design. And today, you're going to see how this low-decibel culture applies to one of the trickiest human inventions of all: trade. Trade in the Ashanti Empire wasn't just about moving goods. It was about moving harmony. Salt, kola nuts, gold dust, smoked fish, indigo-dyed cloth, ivory bangles, iron blades, pepper. None of these were simply products. They were messengers between regions, cultural diplomats, and the way they moved across space and time, quietly, deliberately, reflected the soul of an empire that treated noise as a kind of spiritual pollution. You walk into Kejetia Market just after sunrise, before the sun turns the dust to fire, and it's massive. You expected stalls and shouting and the clamor of competition, but instead, you get something closer to a murmured symphony. Everyone is moving, negotiating, arranging, bartering, and yes, buying. But it's all done in low tones, with sideways glances, hand gestures, and a volume level that would make a modern-day trader twitch. Ashanti traders don't haggle with their lungs. They bargain with their eyebrows. You watch a woman approach a cloth seller. She doesn't say, "How much?" She says, "The sun has favored this dye today." The seller smiles and replies, "Only a queen would recognize that." They go back and forth, layering sweet nothings, until the price floats out like a whispered secret. It's like if Etsy was run by wise old women with centuries of soft power under their head wraps. You're told that in Ashanti trade, to raise your voice is to lose face. The louder you are, the more desperate you seem. And desperation smells like weakness. So, instead of shouting your price, you speak it like a riddle. Instead of arguing, you flatter. And if a deal falls through, you part with a proverb and a smile, because the gods are always watching, and they hate poor manners. This is commerce shaped by culture, and by consequence, you find that almost every market interaction is a performance and a test. There are phrases you're supposed to say, postures you're expected to take. Even the tone of your voice communicates more than your words ever could. Speaking too quickly suggests impatience. Speaking too slowly suggests scheming. And speaking too loudly? Well, that just means you weren't raised right. Historians still debate whether Ashanti trade systems were centralized from Kumasi or governed independently by local chiefs and merchant alliances. But what's clear is that no matter where you went, from the forest markets of Bekwai to the salt-rich savannas near the north, everyone moved to the same silent rhythm. Here's tonight's fringe fact. Some Ashanti market women were known to refuse to sell their goods if they had bad dreams the night before. Not because of superstition in the way we think of it, but because they believed the ancestors were giving them ethical warnings. Selling that day might cause an imbalance. You might shortchange someone without meaning to. You might invite misfortune by ignoring a spiritual whisper. Imagine walking into your local store and the cashier says, "Sorry, no tomatoes today. My grandmother visited me in a dream and said the land is tired." Wild, right? But in this world, it makes perfect sense. And speaking of women, in this empire, they weren't just part of the economy, they ran it. Meet the Ohama, the Queen Mother. She's not just the king's mom. She's a political figure with real teeth, appointed for life, with veto power over major decisions, and a say in who gets to become king in the first place. Now extend that logic down to the marketplace, and you get the market queens. Leaders of trade guilds who manage pricing, ethics, disputes, and more. They're not just selling plantains. They're setting economic policy with a smile and a side eye. Some of these market queens wielded more day-to-day power than local chiefs. They could blacklist unfair traders, fix prices to avoid exploitation, and, get this, even declare market shutdowns if conditions weren't right. And all of that was usually done with zero shouting. Just a few words, a glance, a nod. That's all it took. You pass a salt merchant who's negotiating with two Hausa traders. There's no yelling here either, just hand signals, tapped weights, and a glance that says, You think I don't see your attempt at shortchanging me? It's a masterclass in silence. You walk at dawn. The earth is soft beneath your sandals, not yet baked by the sun. It smells of charcoal, citrus, and old rain. Somewhere in the trees, a hornbill clicks its beak like an old drum being tested. The path ahead winds through a forest corridor, thick, shadowy, green. But there's no fear, not here, because you're walking on Ebeninkiane, the King's Road. It's not a paved highway or a marble causeway. It's not lined with statues of lion-hearted generals or bronze plaques explaining battles. What it is, though, is magic. At least, in the logistical sense, a dirt track so well organized, so brilliantly maintained, and so spiritually guarded that it's basically a highway through time. These roads are the veins of the Ashanti Empire. You don't just travel on them, you move through history. It wasn't easy. Maintaining a road system without bulldozers, asphalt, or even modern maps meant discipline bordering on obsession. But that's exactly what the Ashanti had. The Aberimpan, senior captains, oversaw the construction and repair of roads the way a surgeon oversees a heart transplant. No mistakes, no shortcuts, no excuses. Every stretch of road had its guardian clan. They didn't just fix potholes. They offered sacrifices, consulted diviners, swept the paths with brooms made of palm fronds. Not for aesthetics, though sure, a clean road is easier on the feet, but because a neglected road could anger the gods. And nobody wants an angry road god. You pass a shrine near a crossroads, 4 rocks arranged like a compass rose, each smeared with red clay and topped with broken bottles. A Gina Nkinkim's shrine, the crossroads spirit. Travelers stop to bow their heads, maybe drop a coin, a cola nut, or something shiny from their pocket. Travel here is always spiritual. That doesn't mean it wasn't practical, too. The roads were wide enough for caravans, straight enough to keep bandits guessing. And here's the kicker, swept daily in key sections, especially near the capital. Daily, with brooms. You've probably never swept your kitchen floor that consistently. It's not all about trade, though. These roads also serve a darker, quieter function, movement of armies. And if you're expecting thundering hooves, barked orders, or the shriek of war horns, sorry to disappoint. Ashanti soldiers moved like fog, silent, steady, intentional. No trumpet blasts announcing their arrival, just the low beat of the Dawaro bell, and even that only in rare moments. The idea was simple. Control isn't noise, it's presence. The Ashanti military functioned like a living circuit, each warrior a nerve, each commander a pulse. No chaotic yelling mid-battle, no screaming captains losing their minds. Orders were passed through hand signals, drum codes, and color-coded insignias on the cloth sashes worn at the waist. You might think this sounds like fantasy. It's not. One fringe account from a Dutch observer described an Ashanti ambush in which over 2,000 soldiers emerged from the forest without making a single sound. The enemy didn't even know they were surrounded until their fires were already extinguished. Not with water, with sand, poured slowly, gently, over every flame, like a ghost smothering a dream. What's wild is how flexible these soldiers were. They weren't just swordsmen or archers. They were engineers, bridge makers, scouts, cooks, herbalists. Everyone had a role. Everyone rotated roles. If your general got sick, the cook might become the new tactician. If your drummer died, the spearman behind him would pick up the rhythm without missing a beat. An army of multitaskers, deadly, efficient, humble. And what about the most feared warriors? The Ankobia Fu, the royal bodyguards. These weren't just burly dudes with weapons. They were oath-bound elites, trained from childhood, forbidden to show fear or disloyalty. Some were even buried alive with the king if he died unexpectedly, not as punishment, but as continuation. Their silence in death was just as important as their silence in life. It sounds horrifying, but to them, it was holy. The line between military service and spiritual duty was razor thin. A warrior didn't just carry a blade, he carried the weight of lineage, ritual, and divine expectation. Every sword strike was an offering, every silent victory a prayer answered. Now, let's talk about what these armies did with their eerie composure. Contrary to the warmongering empire stereotype you sometimes hear, the Ashanti weren't constantly invading their neighbors. They were more interested in influence than conquest. Why burn a village when you can trade with it? Why fight a chief when you can marry his daughter and call it diplomacy? But when they did fight, precision, organization, power without panic. Historians still argue whether Ashanti expansion was purely strategic or partly driven by spiritual prophecy, especially in the 18th century, when the empire stretched its arms like a waking giant. Some say they were defending their trade routes. Others say they believed their ancestors demanded territorial stewardship. And somewhere between divine order and economic interest, the empire's boundaries grew. Either way, the result was the same. They built an empire with a spine made of silence and roads that ran like arteries from the heart of Kumasi. Speaking of Kumasi, you finally arrive. And wow, forget the idea of a dusty backwater capital. Kumasi is alive, not noisy, just dense. Dense with symbolism, with purpose, with layers. You've never seen so many courtyards, shrines, and processions moving in complete, unbothered silence. Even the royal palace isn't loud. It radiates. You feel it before you see it. Stuccoed walls painted with ancestral stories, bronze drums the size of bathtubs, stools, yes, stools, everywhere, each representing a chief or sub-chief, a clan, a line, a promise. The golden stool itself, hidden, sacred, never touched by the ground, said to contain the soul of the nation, and again, no yelling. Even when the king speaks, it's through a spokesperson. He whispers, they declare, not because he's shy, but because power in Ashanti culture doesn't shout, it echoes. You watch a meeting between military leaders in the palace courtyard. There's no table banging, no shouting over one another, just paced speech, ritual hand clapping, and long pauses where people think before they speak. Imagine that, thinking before speaking. Revolutionary, right? Tonight's quirky detail? Ashanti military regiments were often named after animals or spirits, and they took on those identities seriously. The Akyempimhene, its 1,000 shields, considered themselves unbeatable. The Bretwo clan, known as leopards, fast, vicious, regal. Some warriors even painted their faces to reflect their regiment's totem before battle, as if invoking it into their bones. And if you think that's theatrical, just wait until you see the drums. Ashanti war drums were not just for music. They were communication tools, like battlefield walkie-talkies made of stretched antelope skin. One rhythm might mean flank left, another, retreat in silence, a third, the ancestors walk with us. Every soldier learned to read drum language like Morse code wrapped in rhythm. It was battle choreography, not chaos. Even now, as the sun begins to dip and the soldiers return to their quarters, no one breaks the spell. There's laughter, yes, and some singing, but no boasting, no bragging. It's not the Ashanti way. You sit on a low stool, chewing roasted yam, watching a boy restring a bow. He hums under his breath, a song about bravery, about tigers, about silence that cuts sharper than steel. And you realize, For the 100th time, this empire wasn't built by noise. It was built by people who understood that power, real power, doesn't need to be loud to be heard. You wake to the sound of mortar pounding yam in the courtyard. Slow, rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Thud, pause, thud. The sun isn't even up yet, but Kumasi is already alive in its quiet way. From your mat in a guest shelter near the palace, you smell the earthy steam of boiled plantains, crushed ginger, and something floral, maybe lemongrass, floating on the breeze. It's the kind of smell that sits right behind your eyes and tugs at something ancestral. You don't know whether you're hungry or homesick. You're still thinking about the soldiers from yesterday, their painted faces, their silent formations, the eerie discipline like something summoned rather than trained. But today? Today is market day, and if you thought the Ashanti Empire was quiet in war, wait until you see how they conquer and trade. Welcome to Kijetia Market, one of the largest open-air markets in all of West Africa. Picture it not like your average noisy bazaar, but more like a breathing organism. Its paths wind like arteries, its stalls pulse with life, and its vendors move with the kind of purposeful grace you usually only see in orchestras or chess tournaments. No shouting, no sales pitch, just rhythm. You step inside and immediately feel it, a strange combination of intensity and stillness. That's the Ashanti way. From above, canvas awnings stretch like sails across the market, shading everything in golden warmth. You walk through it like you've entered a dream coated in color and scent. Pyramids of hot peppers smolder like embers. Rows of smoked fish glisten with oil and salt. Indigo-dyed cloth flaps in the breeze like the wings of 100 tiny birds. But here's the thing. This isn't just a place to buy and sell. This is the empire's economic engine, its beating heart. Ashanti traders are masters of quiet commerce. You pause at a bead seller's stall. Her name is Afua, her fingers as fast as the drummer's back at the palace. Each bead she threads carries a secret. These aren't just pretty colors strung together. They're social messages, status updates, life milestones in glass and clay. You ask about a deep green and white combination, and she smiles faintly. This means you've survived something, she says. You don't ask what. She doesn't explain further. The point isn't to say everything, it's to say exactly enough. Next to her, a kente weaver works silently. Strip by strip, the cloth emerges. It's a language, really. Gold for royalty, green for growth, blue for peace, red for the blood of those who came before. You ask how long one cloth takes to complete. He doesn't answer right away, just lifts the bolt of fabric into the light and lets it speak for him. The threads shimmer like a story you weren't meant to read all at once, and that's exactly it. The Ashanti way is to do things slowly and well. Loudness is a shortcut. Volume is desperation. Here, they build everything to last, especially their wealth. Trade routes extend in every direction from this market. North to the Sahel, east into Yorubaland, south to the coastal forts. Gold dust, cola nuts, textiles, even slaves during the darkest chapters, all passed through these hands. And when the Europeans arrived, they weren't greeted with chaos. They found an economy so advanced, it left them squinting at their own systems. Gold, of course, was king. But not just as a precious metal, Ashanti society had transformed gold dust into currency. Imagine conducting business with grains of sunlight. People wore tiny leather pouches at their waists, filled with gold. Next to those, miniature brass weights shaped like animals, tools, even little scenes, like a pair of men sharing a stool, which meant agreement is better than conflict. Each weight carried its own proverb. philosophy in your pocket. You watch a deal unfold between a merchant and a buyer. No shouting, just a series of practiced motions. A brass scale balanced on a carved block. A pinch of gold dust poured from a horn-shaped container. Eyes focused on equilibrium like surgeons in mid-operation. It's mesmerizing. And yes, people tried to cheat, but others trained themselves to hear the sound of fake gold hitting the pan. One tiny clink off, you're out. Historians still argue whether this kind of economic system slowed Ashanti modernization or preserved it from colonial entanglements. Some say it created friction with European-style banks and coinage. Others believe it allowed the Ashanti to resist foreign dominance longer by relying on indigenous wealth structures. One thing's certain, it was precise, it was respected, and it didn't need anyone yelling to work. You keep walking, past the dye vats, past the herbalists with their shelves of bark and bone. You see a group of leather workers stitching sandals and ceremonial bags. One of them is threading a suman, a small protective charm pouch, into a warrior's belt. He doesn't speak. He just nods once. You get the sense that even the charms here whisper rather than shout. But the real surprise? The women. You round a bend in the market and see a semicircle of matriarchs seated in shaded thrones. Well, wooden stools with enough authority to feel royal. These are the queen mothers, not wives of kings, not ornamental, but leaders in their own right. They vet new leaders. They remove corrupt ones. Their authority runs deeper than titles. Some of them own entire trading fleets. Others command private militias. And their voices? Softer than the wind, but everyone listens. One of them catches your eye. She doesn't speak. She just raises a hand slightly, a gesture more commanding than any speech you've heard all day. And now comes your favorite part, the fringe facts. Did you know some Ashanti healers believe certain herbs would refuse to work unless harvested with compliments? That's right, talking plants. If you cut them while insulting your neighbor or gossiping, the medicine would spoil. One particular vine was said to scream, loudly, if you tried to cut it under a full moon. Creepy? Sure. But maybe it worked. Who knows? Another trader swears by his rain knife, a blade forged only on the wettest nights of the year. It rusts faster than it cuts, but he insists it makes people tell the truth when it's held to their throat. Not that he uses it often. Like most Ashanti tools, it's about presence, not performance. You reach the end of the market path just as twilight begins its descent. Stalls are packing up with the precision of soldiers. No rush, no fuss. Leftover goods marked in chalk. Offerings placed at shrines. Brooms sweep dust into neat lines that vanish with the wind. And once again, no one yells. That's the real magic here. The market works. Deals close. Justice happens. Power flows. All without anyone needing to raise their voice. In the Ashanti Empire, wealth didn't shout. It didn't flex. It pulsed quietly through fabric, through gold, through matriarchs and medicine and millennia of mutual respect. You step outside, carrying a small pouch of beads, a story no one else will understand. That's okay. You don't need to say anything. The market already did. You wake the next morning to the low pulse of drumming, steady, almost like a heartbeat tucked beneath the morning mist. Not war drums, not a call to arms, just a quiet rhythm that floats through the air like breath itself. It doesn't startle you. It doesn't ask for your attention. It's just there, existing like a truth you haven't quite grasped yet. You lie still and listen, and in that stillness, something clicks. In the Ashanti world, nothing is done quickly, and nothing is done loudly unless it must be. Today, you're stepping into the core of that world, Not gold, not markets, but governance. The gears beneath the gold. You assume governance means speeches, grandstanding, crowds, loud declarations that bounce off the marble halls of power. But here, power doesn't announce itself. It whispers. It shifts in shadows and speaks through symbols. It's not a lion's roar. It's the lean of tall grass just before the predator appears. The Ashanti didn't govern by force. They orchestrated by consensus, silence, and ritual. And it worked for centuries. You walk toward the palace, the Manhaya, home of the Asantehene, not some looming fortress with steel gates and glowering guards. No, this place is warmth carved into architecture. Clay walls painted in geometric black and ochre, roofs that bend like the shoulders of ancestors leaning in to listen. The murals are alive. Mythical beasts, serpents, birds mid-flight, all tangled in allegory. This isn't just a place to rule from. It's a place that reminds you why ruling matters. At the threshold, you meet the Nyokeyim, Hashak. Not guards, not secretaries, linguists. And calling them that is underselling their role entirely. These are the king's living voice. His translators, sure, but also his editors, his filters, his armor. The king doesn't speak directly to anyone in public. You wonder at first, is this pretentious theater? But no, it's something more refined, more deliberate. Silence, after all, cannot be misquoted. In the courtyard, two men are embroiled in a dispute. A farmer, face lined with sun and soil, and a priest draped in white cloth. Their quarrel? A sacred grove both claim to protect. In another place, this might become a courtroom clash, full of paperwork and posturing. Here, the Okiame listens, calm, careful. Then he responds on the king's behalf, not with decree, but with proverb. When two trees argue, it is the axe that wins. Neither man protests, neither demands an appeal. They bow. The dispute dissolves into understanding, not submission. The Ashanti system wasn't built for shouting matches. It was built like a woven cloth, threads of tradition, counsel, ritual, and patience. The Asantehene ruled, yes, but his power was not absolute. He moved with the weight of the council of elders, the wisdom of clan heads, and the steady guidance of the queen mothers. Women whose authority and lineage matters often outweighed that of chiefs. You want top-down hierarchy? You won't find it here. This is distributed authority dressed in ancestral regalia. You enter the royal chamber. The floors are smooth clay, polished by centuries of bare feet and solemn footsteps. The smell is heady. Palm wine, incense, old wood. In the center of the chamber sits nothing but an empty stool. No, not empty. Occupied by something sacred. The golden stool, Gins I Sika Dwa Kofi, is not for sitting, ever. It is believed to house the spirit of the Ashanti people. It didn't come from craftsmen or carvers. According to legend, it descended from the heavens, conjured by the high priest Okamfo Anokie and landing gently in the lap of the first king. Gold? Yes, but not treasure. Power? Yes, but not wielded. This is the soul of the empire in physical form. And here's the twist. Even the king bows to it. You don't mess with the stool. You don't fake reverence. You don't build replicas. Ask the British what happened when they tried. If a king fails to live up to the stool's symbolism, he's not corrected, he's destooled? Literally removed. His stool is turned on its side. His symbols are stripped. His name is no longer spoken in honor. He can never lead again. Imagine if your mayor had to face that kind of trial every few years, not an election. A ritual review. Here's the twist. Even the king bows to it. You don't mess with the stool. You don't fake reverence. You don't build replicas. Ask the British what happened when they tried. If a king fails to live up to the stool symbolism, he's not corrected. He's destooled, literally removed. His stool is turned on its side. His symbols are stripped. His name is no longer spoken in honor. He can never lead again. Imagine if your mayor had to face that kind of trial every few years. Not an election, a ritual review. Yes, Ashanti leaders were subject to performance evaluations, and they were not symbolic. Chiefs had to maintain peace, care for their people, respect tradition, and uphold justice. Fail, and you weren't just fired. You were unseated with spiritual precision. It wasn't public shame, it was cosmic correction. The people didn't yell, they didn't riot, they simply turned the stool. Historians still debate, was this a kind of democracy in disguise? A monarchy softened by moral oversight? Some argue it was an ingenious fusion of centralized power and grassroots accountability. Others think it masked deep social control with poetic ritual. Either way, you can't deny it kept things functioning for centuries, with minimal bloodshed and maximum symbolism. You step into a quieter chamber where records are being kept, not on paper, but on crystal leather scrolls, palm frond manuscripts, and even memory boards, carved with symbols like soundless sentences. These aren't bureaucratic checklists, they're metaphoric archives. A single carved fish might mean trade. A coiled snake could mark a betrayal. You need training just to read them. It's like trying to decode a culture's subconscious. Nearby, an elder tells you how meetings of chiefs begin, not with handshakes or national anthems, but with the pouring of libation to the ancestors. One by one, names of those who came before are spoken into the ground. We stand because they stood, the elder says. We speak because they listened. You find yourself nodding without realizing. Then comes something stranger. A boy not older than 10 walks past, tapping a drum, not just playing, but or talking. The Ashanti were masters of the talking drum, able to mimic speech using pitch, rhythm, and timing. Messages could be sent between villages miles apart. A single beat pattern might say, "The king calls the council." Another, "Danger near the river." It's the first social network. No Wi-Fi, just wrists and wisdom. Back outside, you watch a woman sweeping the palace path. But look closer. She's not cleaning, she's erasing. Not dirt, not dust. Footprints. It's symbolic, clearing away the imprint of the last meeting. A reset. A clean slate for the next decision, the next council, the next negotiation. Even the floors participate in diplomacy. Now someone starts a story. No formal stage, just elders and a few warriors gathered under a neem tree. The tale winds between myth and policy. A leopard who governed without claws. A tortoise who tricked a chief by hiding under his own stool. The laughter is gentle, the lessons sharp. Story is law here, and law is music, and music is memory. So here you are, in the empire that governs without raising its voice. The empire that settles disputes with parables, dethrones kings with rituals, and broadcasts commands through beats. You expected fanfare, you found finesse, and you're not the only one surprised. European colonists were baffled by the Ashanti's ability to maintain order without marching armies down every road. What they missed, what you now see, is that the Ashanti didn't conquer their own people. They, wove them together. And you're starting to feel the pattern, because this isn't silence, it's strategy. You settle yourself quietly at your writing desk, the familiar flicker of a paper lantern casting soft, wavering shadows across the room. The amber glow dances over the polished wood and the delicate scrolls stacked neatly to one side. inviting you into a world where ink and thought mingle like whispered secrets. The faint scent of sandalwood mingles with the earthy aroma of ink, a comforting combination that settles your restless mind. Before you lies a sealed letter from your Lord, its deep red wax emblem unbroken and promising a message heavy with duty and expectation. You break the seal carefully, the faint crackle of hardened wax punctuating the stillness. Unfolding the parchment, you see the neat calligraphy, elegant, precise, and imbued with the weight of command. The letter outlines requests and instructions, a roadmap for the days ahead, but underneath the formal tone, you sense the undercurrent of reliance. You are more than a warrior. You are a cog in a grand design, a thread in a vast tapestry of alliances, honor, and governance. This letter is the voice of that design, and you must respond with the same clarity and care. You pick up your brush, its bamboo handle worn smooth by years of use, and dip it into the black ink. The first stroke glides across the rice paper with practiced ease. You write not just to communicate, but to persuade, to express loyalty, and to maintain the fragile peace that hangs by a thread between rival clans. There is an art to letter writing, subtle and intricate. One must balance respect with assertion, humility with strength. The wrong word could escalate conflict. The right one might soothe tempers or kindle alliances. You remind yourself how many battles were avoided not by the sword, but by the careful crafting of phrases. Your brush moves rhythmically, each character flowing from the tip like water tracing gentle curves on stone. The act itself is calming, a meditation in ink. The rhythm steadies your breath, quiets your mind, and for a moment, you are neither samurai nor vassal, but a calligrapher weaving stories with each stroke. Historians still argue whether samurai were more warriors or poets, but most agree that the best of them embodied both. The pen was an extension of the sword, a way to fight without bloodshed, to wield influence in silence. A soft rap at the door pulls you back to the present. The cook enters quietly, carrying a lacquered tray with a small bowl of pickled vegetables. A humble offering meant to refresh your palate and spirit in the long afternoon. You thank the cook with a small bow, appreciating the simple warmth of the gesture. You set the bowl aside, savoring the tangy flavors as you sip water from a lacquered cup, the cool liquid sliding smoothly down your throat. The sensory contrasts, the sour bite of the pickles, the smoothness of water, the smoky scent of sandalwood, ground you in the moment. Returning to your letter, you carefully read over each line, checking for tone and clarity. You fold the parchment with practiced hands, then melt fresh wax onto the fold, pressing your family crest into the soft red seal. The imprint is a silent vow, honor, loyalty, and truth bound together. You imagine the courier who will carry this letter, braving dirt roads and unpredictable weather, delivering your words to distant ears. His journey will be long and perilous, passing through villages, forests, and checkpoints, a silent thread connecting you to your Lord. The act of sending a letter carries a quiet poetry. The message travels beyond your reach, but its impact ripples through power and politics, family and fate. It's a reminder that even in a world ruled by swords, words have their own formidable power. After sealing the letter, you fold your hands in your lap and lean back, letting the calm seep into your bones. The room feels warmer now, filled with the soft glow of lantern light and the faint echo of distant raindrops dripping from the eaves. Outside, the rain has ceased entirely, leaving behind a fresh, earthy scent and the gentle chorus of birds greeting the clearing skies. You reflect on how much of a samurai's life is spent in these quiet moments, waiting, writing, contemplating rather than on the battlefield. It's the patience to endure, the discipline to prepare, and the wisdom to act only when necessary that define true strength. Your gaze drifts to a scroll hanging on the wall, a poem celebrating the transient beauty of cherry blossoms, reminding you that life, like the petals, is brief and precious. It's a lesson repeated endlessly in samurai culture, and one you carry deeply. The room holds a hush now, broken only by the soft crackling of the lantern wick and the occasional rustle as a breeze slips through the shoji screens. The cat curls nearby, purring softly, a quiet companion to your solitary vigil. You consider how many samurai found solace in these peaceful rituals. The tea ceremonies, the poetry, the quiet moments of reflection, balancing the fierce demands of their martial lives with gentle acts of grace. It is not a life of constant action, but of deliberate pauses. Moments like this, where the world seems to slow, where sword and ink share equal importance, and where honor is woven through both speech and silence. You lean forward once more, picking up your brush, but this time to compose a haiku, simple, evocative, and fleeting. Soft rain whispers down, blades rest beneath quiet clouds, peace in fleeting moments. The poem is a quiet confession, a reminder to yourself and to the world that even warriors crave peace. You finish and set your brush aside, the day's tasks complete for now. Outside, the sun begins to break through the clouds, casting pale golden light onto the garden. The world shifts again, but here, in this room filled with ink, poetry, and quiet honor, time seems to stand still for a little longer. The day will bring new duties, challenges, and decisions. But for this moment, you are content to simply be a samurai at rest, writing history in whispers. The afternoon drifts in slowly, stretching itself across the room like a silken tapestry, its golden threads filtering softly through the paper shoji screens. The air is cool yet comforting, carrying faint whispers of the morning rain that has long since ceased. You pause for a moment by the window, watching the garden outside. The leaves still gleam with moisture, tiny droplets clinging like delicate jewels, and the scent of wet earth mingles with the faint fragrance of pine. The world feels hushed, as if holding its breath in a gentle lull. The rhythm of the samurai's day is subtle, not merely a succession of battles and grand gestures, but punctuated by quiet rituals that bring balance to the mind and body. Now, it is time for a different kind of discipline. Kyudo, the way of the bow. You move to the corner where your yumi, the long Japanese bow, rests, its slender curves polished to a soft sheen. Nearby, a quiver holds your arrows, fletched with feathers as light as whispers. Kyudo is not just about hitting a target, it is a moving meditation, an art form in which the act of shooting an arrow is a spiritual practice as much as a martial skill. You take the bow into your hands, feeling its weight, a graceful tension running through its limbs. The grip is familiar, worn smooth from years of use but still precise and demanding. You stand on the tatami mats, feet grounded and steady, and draw the string slowly. The breath flows naturally in and out, steady and calm. As the string pulls taut, the world narrows, and all distractions fade. The arrow is your focus, your connection to the moment and the universe beyond. With a soft release, the arrow flies through the air and strikes the target with a muted, satisfying thud. The sound is quiet but resonant, a testament to the skill and patience required. You breathe deeply, preparing for the next shot. The sequence is rhythmic. Posture, draw, aim, release. Each movement blends seamlessly into the next, creating a flowing dance that transcends mere technique. Historians still argue whether Kyudo was originally developed purely for battle, or whether its meditative aspects were always integral to the practice. Some suggest that by the Edo period, when warfare became less frequent, Kyudo evolved into a spiritual discipline, aligning closely with Zen teachings about presence and detachment. Others maintain that even on the battlefield, the focus and calm required were as crucial as any physical skill. You can appreciate both views. There is something undeniably peaceful in this ritual, a quiet that settles deep in the bones and softens the sharp edges of the day. The repetition quiets the mind in a way that no other practice can, allowing space for reflection and renewal. The cat, a small shadow in the corner, weaves between your ankles, weaving its own quiet rhythm into the moment. You chuckle softly. Perhaps this feline has mastered the art of patience better than most warriors. It jumps nimbly onto the windowsill, eyes fixed on a leaf trembling in the breeze. A tiny hunter fascinated by simple motion. You knock another arrow, steadying your breath again. The garden outside feels alive, almost sentient. Drops still cling to the branches of the cherry trees, some slowly falling to the mossy ground below. The scent of wet pine mixes with the faintest trace of incense from earlier tea ceremonies, creating a subtle perfume that seems designed to calm even the most restless heart. With each arrow loosed, you feel your muscles loosen and your mind sharpen. There's no rush here, no demand for speed, only the graceful flow of intention and action, a cycle repeated endlessly, yet never quite the same. You think about the samurai's reputation as fierce warriors, and yet these quiet practices show a different side, a balance of strength and gentleness, of discipline and grace. The ability to still oneself, to find calm in chaos, was just as prized as any battlefield skill. After a handful of shots, you lower the bow, the tension easing from your arms. The room feels softer now, filled with a residue of quiet focus and calm breath. You glance around. Your cat has fallen asleep curled into a tight ball, undisturbed by the soft sounds. Later, you will tend to the small herb garden just beyond the kitchen, a humble patch of earth where medicinal plants grow under your careful watch. The garden is a place of healing, a reminder that even warriors need care and restoration. For now, though, you sit cross-legged on the tatami, allowing your body to rest. The distant murmur of a nearby stream and the occasional chirp of birds create a soothing soundscape, perfect for easing a busy mind toward stillness. You recall stories of samurai who devoted themselves to poetry and tea ceremonies, blending artistic pursuits with martial prowess. It's a delicate dance between two worlds, the brutal and the beautiful. Kyudo exemplifies this balance, teaching that the goal is not merely to hit the target, but to perfect the self through discipline and mindfulness. As the afternoon sun begins to dip lower, casting long shadows across the garden, you rise slowly and stretch. The bow is returned to its place, nestled carefully on its stand. Your feet meet the cool tatami mats, grounding you once more. Outside, a breeze stirs the leaves, carrying with it the subtle promise of evening. You step to the window and watch as clouds part slightly, letting a sliver of golden light spill onto the moss-covered stones below. In these moments, between action and rest, between breath and silence, you find the true spirit of the samurai, a harmony of contrasts. And so, the day continues, unfolding gently, a tapestry of quiet rituals and thoughtful pauses that shape not only a warrior, but a human being. The late afternoon light begins to soften, casting a warm amber glow through the shoji screens. making the delicate paper seem almost translucent. Outside, the garden remains lush and vibrant, the rain having coaxed every leaf, branch, and flower into a deeper shade of green. The wet earth exhales a faint, soothing scent of moss and pine, filling the air with the subtle fragrance of life renewed. You walk slowly across the tatami mats toward the tea room at the edge of the garden, a small, simple structure designed to offer refuge from the busy world, a sanctuary for the ritual you are about to perform. The tea ceremony, or chanoyu, is a cornerstone of samurai culture, but not for the reasons you might think. It isn't just a fancy way to drink green tea. It's a deliberate, mindful practice that teaches patience, grace, and humility. Today, as the rain washes away the dust of the streets and the weight of past duties, this ceremony offers a gentle pause, a moment to ground yourself in the present. You kneel with practiced ease on the tatami, feeling the woven straw beneath your knees. Your hands move methodically, almost without thought, but filled with intention, wiping the tea bowl with a soft cloth, measuring the vibrant green matcha powder, pouring hot water in a slow, spiraling motion. The soft whistle of boiling water mingles with the quiet rustling of paper and the occasional chirp of a cicada somewhere beyond the garden wall. The tea's color is vivid, almost electric against the muted tones of the room. You lift the bowl carefully, inhaling the faintly grassy aroma before taking a small sip. The flavor is gentle but complex, a balance of bitterness and earthiness that wakes your senses without rushing your thoughts. It's not unlike life itself, layered, nuanced, and demanding attention to appreciate fully. Historians still argue whether the samurai adopted the tea ceremony mainly for cultural refinement or as a method of mental training to calm the warrior's often turbulent mind. Some scholars suggest that the act of preparing and drinking tea was a way to cultivate wabi-sabi, an aesthetic of simplicity and imperfection that runs contrary to the sharp precision expected in battle. Others believe it was a practical strategy to develop discipline and control, key virtues for anyone who might face sudden violence. You lean back slightly, savoring the warmth radiating from the bowl and the serenity settling over your thoughts. The stillness is interrupted by a soft knock on the sliding door. The cook steps inside quietly, holding a lacquered tray with a small plate of wagashi, traditional sweets crafted to reflect the seasons. Today, they are shaped like autumn leaves, their colors a delicate blend of crimson and gold, their texture soft and inviting. Taking one, you notice the subtle sweetness, a perfect complement to the tea's slight bitterness. It is a reminder that even in a life defined by duty and discipline, there is room for small indulgences, moments of simple pleasure that nourish the spirit. Your gaze drifts toward the tokonoma, the alcove where a scroll hangs, bearing an elegantly brushed poem about the fleeting beauty of cherry blossoms, a metaphor for life's impermanence. The brushstrokes are bold, yet fluid, capturing the tension between strength and fragility. It's a quiet nod to the samurai's acceptance of death, a reality always present but never dwelled upon. The garden outside seems to echo this sentiment. Drops of rain still cling to the azalea bushes and the maple leaves, slowly falling one by one like nature's own countdown. The sound is so soft, it might have been imagined, a gentle percussion that blends with the muted buzz of insects and the distant call of a nightingale beginning its evening song. You think about the role of the tea ceremony in samurai society, not just as a personal ritual, but also as a social one. Hosting and attending these gatherings was a way to display not only skill in the art, but also cultural sophistication and respect for guests. The ability to navigate these social occasions with grace, was as important as mastering the sword, a fact that often surprises those who imagine samurai as solely fierce fighters. In fact, many famous samurai were also poets, painters, and tea masters. The ideal warrior was a blend of warrior and artist, strength and sensitivity combined in equal measure. This balance was crucial to maintaining harmony in a society that valued both martial prowess and cultural refinement. Your thoughts drift briefly to the ongoing scholarly debate about the influence of Zen Buddhism on the tea ceremony. While some argue the connection is direct and profound, others suggest that the tea ritual evolved more from aesthetic and social needs rather than purely religious ones. Either way, the meditative quality of the ceremony is undeniable, a slow unfolding of presence that aligns well with the samurai's quest for inner peace. As the sky outside deepens into twilight, you finish your tea and carefully wipe the bowl clean. The final movements are slow and deliberate, as if sealing the ritual with respect and gratitude. The room feels lighter, as though the act of ceremony has lifted a weight from your shoulders. Rising, you move toward the window and gaze out at the garden bathed in the soft glow of dusk. The rain has left behind a world refreshed and renewed, a fitting backdrop for the calm that now settles within you. The cat, which had been napping lazily near the hearth, stretches and pads softly across the floor, brushing against your legs with a quiet insistence. You bend down to scratch behind its ears, the familiar rhythm grounding you further in the moment. Outside, the first stars begin to twinkle, their light faint but steady. The air cools slightly, carrying with it the faint sounds of village life winding down, the murmur of distant voices, the closing of shutters, the soft clatter of footsteps on gravel. You pause, feeling the subtle shift from day to night, from activity to rest. The tea ceremony has done its work, calming the mind and opening a space for reflection and ease. Tomorrow will bring new duties, perhaps new challenges, but for now, you are suspended in this quiet balance, a harmony of movement and stillness, strength and softness. You take one last look at the garden, breathing in the scent of wet earth and pine, and step away from the window with a sense of peaceful completion. The samurai's day continues to unfold gently, a slow, deliberate dance between duty and calm, action and contemplation. And as the night deepens, you carry with you the quiet power of this ritual, the art of presence, the grace of patience, and the simple, enduring beauty of tea. The evening's gentle hush settles in around you like a soft shroud, wrapping the world in quiet shadows and muted sounds. Outside, the last traces of twilight vanish as the sky deepens into navy, and distant lanterns begin to flicker softly, like fireflies caught in a gentle breeze. The steady drip of leftover raindrops from eaves and leaves plays a subtle rhythm on the wooden porch, a soothing, natural soundtrack for the ritual awaiting you inside. You step toward your small writing desk by the window, a simple lacquered surface with neat stacks of washi paper and inkstones carefully arranged. The fading light still offers just enough illumination to write, but the candle on the desk will soon be needed, its flickering flame ready to lend warmth and life to the night. In this quiet space, the act of letter writing begins, not merely a mundane task, but a vital thread linking you to the world beyond your immediate surroundings. In an era without phones or instant messages, letters were the lifeblood of communication, especially for a samurai. Whether dispatching instructions to distant retainers, expressing gratitude to a patron, or sharing heartfelt thoughts with a family member, writing was both a duty and a form of meditation. You pick up the brush, feeling its familiar weight between your fingers, the supple hairs poised for graceful strokes. Before you lies the inkstone, a small, shallow dish of smooth stone designed for grinding solid ink sticks into liquid form. You take the ink stick, dense, blackened wood, and begin the slow, deliberate circular motions, grinding the stick against the stone, releasing dark, fragrant ink that pools gently in the carved reservoir. The faint aroma of the ink, earthy and subtly sweet, rises in the cool room air, mingling with the crisp, fibrous scent of fresh washi paper, an aroma that somehow evokes both calm and anticipation. Historians still argue about the importance of letter writing for samurai, whether it was primarily practical communication or a deeper form of spiritual exercise. Many suggest the act itself was a discipline akin to swordsmanship, careful, deliberate, requiring focus and patience. Each brushstroke demanded control and mindfulness, a stark contrast to the chaos of battle. Some scholars propose that letters served as a means to cultivate inner calm, while others believe they reinforced social hierarchies and alliances. You dip the brush in the ink, feeling its softness absorb the liquid, and begin. The first characters emerge on the paper, flowing in elegant kanji that speak both of tradition and personal expression. Your handwriting is a blend of strength and artistry, each stroke deliberate yet fluid, reflecting the balance every samurai strives for in life. You write of the day's peaceful rain, describing the garden's leaves shimmering like emerald jewels under the soft drizzle. You mention the tea ceremony and the delicate sweets that followed, capturing the small joys amid the day's duties. As the words flow, you pause occasionally to reflect. Your thoughts drift to the seasonal changes outside the window, the way the rain nourished the earth, how the shifting light altered the garden's mood, and how, like the cherry blossoms so often immortalized in poetry, life is fleeting and precious. You include a few lines of poetry, an old favorite, about the fleeting beauty of dawn mist and how it fades as surely as youth. The candle's flame flickers, casting dancing shadows on the wall, and you can feel the room growing warmer as the night settles fully. The quiet scratch of brush on paper blends with the soft rustle of your kimono as you adjust your position on the tatami mat. Outside, the wind picks up gently, whispering through the trees, carrying the faint sounds of night insects beginning their chorus. You glance briefly out the window, appreciating the world's calm symmetry, a perfect contrast to the day's earlier bustle. In writing this letter, you are reminded how words wield power, shaping relationships and conveying honor. A well-crafted letter could smooth tensions, reinforce loyalty, or simply offer comfort to a loved one far away. Sealing a letter was no trivial act. The choice of paper, the seal's impression, even the ink's quality spoke volumes about the sender's respect and intent. The samurai took such details seriously as part of the unspoken language of honor that governed their lives. The envelope is folded carefully, edges aligned with precision, then sealed with a stamp bearing your family's mon, a symbol of lineage and pride. The wax is soft and warm as you press the seal, imprinting your mark that declares, "This message carries my honor." It will be entrusted to a messenger in the morning, traveling through rain-soaked roads and moonlit paths, bound for its destination with the same care and urgency as any battle order. You place the finished letter on a small tray by the door, ready for the courier's early visit. It is a simple act, yet it carries the weight of connection, reminding you that even in times of uncertainty, communication endures. As your hand rests on the desk, you allow yourself a moment of quiet contemplation. The room feels like a haven, removed from the clangor of swords and shouts, a sanctuary of stillness and thought. The ritual of letter writing has done more than convey words. It has settled your mind, tuned your spirit to a slower rhythm and renewed your sense of purpose. You stretch quietly, feeling the pleasant fatigue of a day well lived, filled with the discipline of sword practice, the focus of calligraphy, the serenity of tea, and now the intimacy of penned thoughts. The evening air cools slightly as a gentle breeze slips through a crack in the shoji, bringing with it the fresh scent of pine and damp earth. Outside, the village is quieting further. You catch faint sounds, a dog's bark far away, the closing of a gate, the muted footsteps of neighbors retreating indoors. The world is slowing, folding into rest. The pen, once mighty for shaping plans of war, now offers a softer power, the ability to connect hearts, affirm alliances, and preserve memories. For a samurai, this balance between strength and sensitivity is essential. After all, a sword wielded without wisdom is just metal. You rise from your seat, feeling the smoothness of the tatami beneath your feet. The day's final light fades completely, replaced by the steady glow of lanterns and stars above. Your house is warm, sheltered, a cocoon against the chill of night. As you prepare to extinguish the candle, your thoughts settle on the interconnectedness of all these rituals, each a thread in the fabric of samurai life. The discipline of the bow and sword, the poetry of tea and calligraphy, the quiet strength of written words, all woven into a tapestry that defines not just a warrior's day, but his soul. With a final glance out the window at the darkened garden, you close the shutters, sealing the night's tranquility inside. Tomorrow's challenges will come, as they always do. But for now, you are wrapped in the gentle embrace of evening, where peace and purpose coexist. The wind hums softly through the eaves, and the world exhales a sigh of rest. The night settles around you like a soft, dark quilt, the kind that tucks you in gently after a long day. You sink slowly onto your futon, feeling the familiar support of the straw-filled mattress beneath the woven fabric, the scent faintly earthy and comforting. Outside, the rain has finally stopped, leaving behind a world washed clean and glistening, the scent of wet pine needles and moist earth drifting faintly through the slightly open window. The cool night air slips in, soft against your skin, carrying with it the distant hum of nocturnal insects beginning their quiet chorus. You lie back, your head cushioned by a simple but well-fluffed pillow, and let your eyes wander toward the paper lantern hanging near the doorway. Its soft amber light casts warm, flickering shadows on the walls, the gentle sway making the room feel alive yet peaceful. You breathe in slowly, deeply, feeling the calm seep into your bones. The day's duties, the morning's sword practice, the afternoon's tea ceremony, and this evening's quiet letter writing all settle in your memory like a soothing balm. It's strange, really, to think how much life unfolds in these small, quiet moments, far from the clamor of battles or the clang of armor. A samurai's day might be filled with rigorous discipline and duty, yes, but there is also this, the poetry of routine, the art of small rituals that ground you, connect you to your heritage and to the earth itself. As you lie there, your mind drifts back to the morning. You recall the precise movements of your katana practice, the way your muscles tensed and relaxed in harmony, the satisfying thwack as your wooden sword struck the training post, the rhythm almost hypnotic. The discipline required was immense, but so was the reward, a sense of control, focus, and readiness that carried you through the day. You smile softly, remembering how you stumbled briefly when the rain started, your footing slippery on the wet wooden floor, and how your sensei had just chuckled quietly, reminding you that a warrior must adapt to all conditions, even soggy mornings. The tea ceremony that followed was a study in contrasts. After the sharpness of the sword, the softness of carefully poured water, the delicate clink of porcelain, and the slow, mindful sipping of matcha. You remember the steam rising gently from the tea bowl, the faint bitterness balanced by the sweetness of the wagashi sweets, shaped like tiny blossoms. It's in these moments of calm that you truly appreciate the transient beauty of life, the fleeting aroma of tea, the momentary bloom of a flower, the whisper of rain on leaves. Later, you had shared a modest meal with your fellow retainers, rice, pickled vegetables, and grilled fish. Simple fare, but prepared with care and respect for nature's gifts. There was laughter, too, as someone recounted an old tale about a samurai who mistook a raccoon dog for a demon in the rain-soaked forest. The story was absurd enough to make everyone chuckle softly, a gentle reminder that even the fiercest warriors have their moments of humility and humor. Now, as you settle into the quiet of the evening, your thoughts turn to the letter you wrote, the ritual of grinding ink, the weight of the brush, the delicate strokes of kanji across crisp paper. It was more than just communication. It was a meditation, a chance to slow the mind, to gather your thoughts and emotions in a controlled dance of ink and paper. Historians still debate whether samurai viewed letter writing primarily as a duty or as a spiritual practice, but either way, the discipline required is undeniable. You recall sealing the letter with the family mon, pressing the warm wax with care, imagining the journey it will take the next morning. A messenger braving muddy roads and slippery paths to deliver your thoughts to someone far away, perhaps a lord, a sibling, or a mentor. That simple connection, fragile as paper yet strong as steel in its intent, feels like a thread tying you to the wider world beyond your immediate surroundings. Your eyes close briefly as you remember the scent of the ink, the smooth feel of the brush, the faint crackle of the candle as it burned low. The small comforts of home, these are the things that balance the samurai's life, the quiet counterpoint to the harsh realities of duty and war. Outside, the village has grown silent. The footsteps and voices of the day have faded into whispers and sighs. You hear the faint rustling of bamboo leaves in the breeze, the distant call of an owl, nature's lullaby inviting you to rest. The moon, a pale guardian in the night sky, spills silver light through the window, casting soft patterns on the floor and illuminating the garden beyond. You imagine the droplets clinging to leaves, sparkling like tiny jewels, the stone lantern standing silent and stoic amid the wet earth. You feel the steady rise and fall of your breath, the slow pulse of calm spreading through your body. Every muscle relaxes, the tension of the day dissolving like mist. You remind yourself that tomorrow will bring new challenges, perhaps an inspection, a meeting with the daimyo, or another day of training. But for now, you are safe, surrounded by the warmth of your home and the gentle embrace of night. As your mind drifts toward sleep, you consider the balance that defines a samurai's existence, the strength and precision of the sword, balanced by the grace and patience of daily rituals, the external demands of duty tempered by inner reflection and calm. It is a life of paradox, but one made whole by these quiet moments. You let your thoughts settle on a gentle image, the rain-soaked garden in the soft moonlight, the flickering candle on the writing desk, the silent promise of the letter carried safely through the dark. These are the details that linger, the gentle notes that compose the final melody of your day. And now, as the world outside dims and you drift toward rest, you feel the comforting presence of tradition, honor, and quiet resilience. Sleep comes softly, like the last whisper of a breeze through the trees.